most of the time there is a major deficiency on discipleship in that context.
Hey, welcome to Ascend the Hill with Jeremy Austill. I'm Jonathan. This is Pastor Jeremy. How's it going? Welcome to the new year.
Right. First official Ascend the Hill of 2024. In case you haven't noticed yet, in our fasting devotions, we got a new setup.
We do.
New look, new year, new season, new us, right?
With some awesome antlers down here. Look at that. That's pretty sweet.
We're, if you're in just the listening audience, you have no clue. But if you're a YouTube audience member, then you're getting a new look, new vibe.
Well, it's a new year. Knew a lot of things. We're doing 21 days of prayer and fasting right now.
Right.
And
day three.
So we're just tiptoeing into we're close to the shallow end. We're not even to the deep end yet.
Yeah, and I've already developed a personal mantra for this.
Oh yeah.
And it's I don't have to fast 21 days. I don't have to fast 8 days, because at the 8-day mark, I'm probably going to alter my fast a little.
Mm-hmm.
But I've told myself I don't have to fast 21 days. I don't have to fast 8 days. I have to fast today.
Yeah.
That's my mentality.
Yes.
Like, I'm just one day at a time. But one just observation already out of the fast is that it requires you to slow down.
Yeah.
You don't have the same energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything needs to be a little slower pace.
Yep.
You need to pause a little more. And even all the way to the mantra of, I can't worry about the coming days. I'm just living in this day, which I think is a great mindset to have. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to give today everything I have. I'm going to enjoy and delight in today. And then I'll get up and do it all over again tomorrow. And so it's a mindset that has served me well in years past, that I'm wanting to come back to a little more deeply and intimately through this fast, because new assignment, new season, new job. It's not new really at this point. It's 15 or so months in, close to 15 months in.
Yeah.
But all that said, trying to reset some areas. So anyway, all that to say, I just have to fast today.
Yeah, just today, just focusing on today.
Yeah.
And today we're also going to go through a few little fun New Year's themed Would You Rathers, because I think they'll be pretty fun.
I enjoyed the Would You Rathers during the Christmas season.
Yeah, it was fun. There were some fun Christmas ones. And I was going to ask one that was like, would you rather stay up late on New Year's or go to bed? But I think this year, if I saw like on social, you said you actually stayed up this year, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, it's been an off and on thing. When the kids were younger, we went to bed.
Yeah.
To me, there's nothing magical about the stroke of midnight, and especially because it was midnight an hour earlier. Just in another part of the state. But our son, he was playing video games. He was watching TV, and it was getting a little later in the night. We watched the show together, and it's like, well, we might as well just do it. And so stayed up till midnight, took a couple pictures, and went to bed.
Yeah. Well, speaking of New Year's, if you had to spend New Year's Day anywhere, or New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, would you rather spend it on a cruise or in the mountains?
Oh, in the mountains.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
I've done that. Several years we've gone on trips during the New Year's time. And one of the places that we go is Gatlinburg. And so I've done several New Year's days, New Year's Eves in a cabin in the Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area. And I always loved that. I've never been on a cruise.
Really? Okay.
Never been on a cruise. Michelle and I have never gone on one. Some of it is because of the lack of control you have, as in they're taking you somewhere, you can't get off. I want to do vacation the way I want to do it. But other people say it's unbelievable. So I'm sure at some point in our future there will be a cruise. But maybe one of my most memorable New Year's days was a few years ago. We went to Orlando, and we were at Universal Studios. We went there for New Year's Day, and when we walked in, we went to bed normal time early. We didn't stay up late. When we walked in the park, it was a ghost town.
Really?
It was incredible. Until about 1 or 2 o'clock that day, There was not a line one, nobody anywhere. It was amazing.
That's
And
awesome.
so we kind of learned a little hack there.
I
Now,
love
now we did that at Disney one year, and it was
packed.
ridiculously crowded.
Oh,
So yeah,
yikes.
so it didn't translate. I guess the Universal crowd are a little more late night
Yeah.
revelry than
Yeah.
the Disney crowd.
Well, would you rather this year, if you had the option, would you rather learn a new language or an instrument?
I I think probably from a functional, what would be good standpoint, a new language.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to learn one.
Yeah.
I have a hard enough time with English. But I think in the role that I'm in and what I see into my future, it would be better to know languages. Other
Mhm.
people can do the music. I had aspirations musically in my early 20s. I tried to learn the keyboard. I
Yeah.
messed around with the guitar a little bit, and the bottom line is I just didn't have the passion to
Mm.
learn the instrument, to like take all of the time and the work necessary to learn it. I
Yeah.
didn't burn for it. So I didn't. As it pertains to language, when I was in high school, we had the choice of French or Spanish.
Mm.
And I chose French because the Spanish teacher had a reputation for being pretty strict.
Yeah.
And I do, in retrospect, see that as a terrible decision.
Yeah.
So no offense to the French,
Yeah.
but Spanish would be infinitely more useful to me. Even, rudimentary Spanish would be infinitely more useful than the 3 French phrases I can say now.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Well, speaking of French, would you rather give up cheeseburgers or French fries for the entire year?
Oh man, I'd rather give up cheeseburgers. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about food, bruh.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's
Fasting,
like
talking about food.
we're celebrating other people's feasting.
Yep.
Yeah, I would rather give up cheeseburgers. I love good fries,
Mm,
and I'll eat fries with steak. I'll eat fries with pretty much anything.
yeah.
Burgers, I enjoy a good burger, but I don't eat a lot of burgers.
Yeah.
I enjoy a good one. Like I like going to Five Guys every so often if you're
Mhm.
ready to drop $50,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. But so I enjoy a good burger, but it's not something like if I'm going to get something heavy beef, I'm going to probably get a steak,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, real quick, is there a place that you've had fries that you just like, I love those fries. Like they stand out in your head.
Oh yeah, I mean I love Five Guys
Yeah.
fries. I love Steak and Shake fries. I
Yep.
love McDonald's fries. I don't care that people say they're plastic. I love them. I love Outback's fries. I love Longhorn's fries.
Yep.
I mean I just like fries. The
Yeah.
fries that I don't really like are like the big thick steak fries.
Yeah.
I don't love those, except if you go to Red Robin and it's bottomless fries and they give you
Pretty
like
good.
that Cajun seasoning to put on them
Yep.
and take a little barbecue sauce and listen, I need to stop.
Well, here's the last one.
I love fries.
Yeah, the last one before we get into the sermon. Would you rather? You only have 2 options here. I need to preface that because this
Okay.
is a good one. Would you rather attend a Vols basketball championship game or a Vols football championship game? Happen at the same time or in the same year, but you can only go to
pick
one. You can only go to one.
So Tennessee Vols basketball championship or Tennessee Vols football championship. I think the answer, without a whole lot of thought, is football.
Yeah.
That's I love Vols basketball. We're number
Mhm.
5 in the country right now.
Mhm.
I'm hopeful that for the first time in school history, this will be the team that gets us to a Final Four. I mean,
Yeah.
as a Vols fan, basketball, when we get to we've gotten to the Elite Eight one time.
Mhm.
So getting to the Elite Eight, the Final Four, would be massive and feel incredible. Not even necessarily needing to win a championship.
Yeah.
Whereas football, I was, in my senior year of college, my last year of college, and Tennessee won the national title.
Mhm.
Actually, I take that back. I was in my, that's right. It was senior year. It was in '99. It was the
Mhm.
'98 season. 1999 is the national championship game. And so I saw that. And then went through so much misery over the last 10 to 15, 20 years. But I think I love football more.
Yeah.
I think for, what is visible to the nation,
Mhm.
that shines a much brighter light on the state of Tennessee and University
Yeah.
of Tennessee than a hoops championship does. So, yeah, But that's good question.
Yeah, it
I
was
got a few
fun.
guys that I group text with that if
Yeah.
they listen, they'll be like, that was a good one.
Yeah.
That's one of those like, bro group texts that you
Yeah.
ask each other. So
Yeah. Well, new year and new sermon series, we are.
yes.
And it kind of goes through, it doesn't kind of, it goes through our core values as a church. And I
Yes.
guess real quick background on our core values, where do they kind of come from? I know they stem from things that you wanted to see and things you're saying we are this and we are becoming this. So where does it
Yes.
kind of come from, the we are
Well,
statements?
the we are and the we are becoming is basically the statement, like I'm prophetically saying this is who we are. This is our identity. The we are becoming is the acknowledgement that these are areas we need to grow toward always.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really in all of the values, there's no pinnacle. There's no
Yeah.
bottom. There's no end. Like you continually are growing in this trajectory. As far as where the values come from, and just a refresher for anybody that didn't hear the message, because this is language behind the scenes we've been using for the first 15 months of our time pastoring, but it's not necessarily language we've used a ton corporately. We are a blessed family. We are spiritually hungry. We are biblically mature. We are soul healthy, and we are kingdom builders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of those five pillars, if you will, really are derived from 25 years of ministry and 45 years of walking with the Lord. Basically, they're derived from I think core values that the Lord has put in me
Mm-hmm.
as it pertains to not just how I want to function as an individual, but how I am to lead or what I am to lead people into,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they come with somewhat instinctively, as in I didn't have to spend a whole lot of time thinking about like what matters most, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty instinctively, it's pretty ingrained. It comes from just comprehensive, reading of the Bible over and over, knowing the Word of God and knowing what the values of Scripture are, knowing what the values of the local church are in the eyes of the Lord. And then there was thought put into like, what's the language for this? What's the sequence? What's the order?
Mm-hmm.
What's the trickle down? How does each piece help the other
Yeah.
and facilitate the benefit of the other? But it's not from a book. It's not from I didn't go to some conference and they gave us five values. This is very personal to me.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, that's how I lead. I lead from a very personal place. I think I've found through 25 years, for me, that's the only way I can be effective.
Yeah.
There are incredible resources out there, and I've gleaned. I've got pastoral friendships where I learn from them, I
Mm-hmm.
observe them, I watch them. There are organizations, networks, movements that are doing things really well that I believe. Sorry, I just
Oh,
kicked your
you're
foot.
good. You're
New
good.
setup, and I'm
Yeah.
learning. I'm learning our borders here in
No,
our
you're good.
space. Um, that are doing great things, and the nuts and bolts of how you get to your values. You're learning so much, but I deeply believe in God's sovereignty and that God in His wisdom was building Michelle and I for this. Like he
Mm-hmm.
he was through the whole of our life raising us for this and building us for this. And so the answer to who we are to become
Mm-hmm.
is on that journey. Like
Yeah.
looking at that journey, looking at what God has done, what has developed, in our wake, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
What seems to be common traits that the Lord has attached to us, and also just what the Lord raised me to value.
Mm-hmm.
And because I believe He selected us and positioned us to be the pastor of this church, then He was embedding in us what He wanted to develop in this church, right?
Yeah.
And so, all of that to say, if you're not careful, you can get really self-centered. Everything that we value is Christ-centered. It has to
Yeah.
be. It has to all point to Him, His
Mm-hmm.
heart, His mission, His ways. And so that's kind of how we arrived at it. And we've had some conversations behind the scenes with different staff members of what's the lingo. I know you and I have talked about it. We hung some banners like, what's the language that best encapsulates these ideas?
Yeah.
last year when we met, we did staff evaluations in January. I mean, I was 2 months in with everybody, and I went in meetings with a lot of the team and just laid out the values. And this is what this value looks like.
Yeah.
If you're going to run with me, if you're going to be a part of where we're going, this is what this value looks like in you as a staff person. So we've already been working behind the scenes for these to begin to be rooted in us. And so I thought, man, January, year plus in, it was the right time to just make some statements over the church of this is who we are, this is what we're aiming toward, this is our trajectory.
Yeah.
And none of it is especially earth shattering.
Yeah.
None of it is like so out of the box. In my younger years, I really valued trying to be clever.
Yeah.
You want to be creative, you want to be different, you want to be cutting edge. And in some ways, we need to continue that endeavor, right? But when it comes to your values, that's not the time to be clever.
Just keep it simple.
It's not the time to be cute.
Yeah.
Like, these are deep rooted matters.
Yeah.
They're ancient. And so it's not a time to be cute and clever and try to reinvent a wheel or to, overthink it now, and think yourself into something that's not even that important or significant. So for us, they're not earth shaking, but once lived and made a mark and a trajectory, they are world changing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And we're talking about in this first section of the series, We Are a Blessed Family, and specifically from Sunday, talking about the family portion of that. And it was interesting because in the backdrop of like society and culture, over the past couple of years, you've seen this like numbers come out from different groups of like church attendance and things like that, where it's either leveled or in some sort of decline in some respects.
Yeah.
And do you think it's somewhat, there's probably a lot of factors to it, but do you think that people forget the family aspect of church and just see it as a thing I have to do, or it's my checkbox, instead of seeing it as, no, this is my family, my community? Do you think we kind of have missed that in the past couple of years that causes those kind of things?
Probably. That's probably a part of it. Our society is becoming increasingly secluded and individualized as we, interestingly enough, are more technologically connected and through a screen connected and have access to more interaction than we've ever had. In some ways, that has caused us to become feel less of a need for human interaction. Now, I think that is a fabricated expression of human interaction, and it's very one-sided. It's not ultimately the best thing for us from a health standpoint, but it kind of scratches the itch of human interaction. And so, whereas, when I was growing up just in the 80s and 90s, when we did not have all of these means of interacting with one another, you had kind of social centers in your community. Obviously, one of our social centers was our school.
Yeah.
And that social center allowed all of us students to interact with one another and then parents to get to know each other. Another social center in my little town was Little League sports.
Yeah.
And it wasn't specialized. You didn't have, quote, travel ball. You didn't have all of that stuff. You had everyday families coming, sitting in the bleachers together and watching their kids and getting to know one another's kids. So there was another social center. And then obviously I think the pillar of a community social center wise is the church that, for the believers, at least in my context that I experienced, it was the ultimate, like, preeminent social center of the lives of all the believers. And so we came in large part because of the relationships, because of the human touch, because of our need. It's just an ingrained human need for human interaction.
Yeah.
And so I think we are dealing with the time in human history where we have a synthetic form of human interaction.
Yeah.
And we feel like that covers a lot of it. Now, it's very subconscious. I don't think people are saying, "Oh, I was on social media this week interacting with people. I don't need to go to church." I think it's an overarching just thing that's worked its way through the whole of society. I had a friend years ago named Damon Thompson. He talked about religion and different stuff like that, and he talked about like vaccination, inoculation, which is obviously a, 2 or 3 years ago started becoming a really hot button topic.
Yeah.
But anyway, the premise being that you get injected with just enough of the real thing that you never catch the real thing.
Yeah.
And I do believe a lot of our quote connectivity that we have been afforded through social media and all of that, I think it has been a just enough of the real thing to keep us from ever catching the real
Mm.
thing of deep human interaction. Now, that's not to say people don't have friends. That's not to say people don't. But when it comes to the church, we've just seen a cultural shift.
Yeah.
We've seen a major cultural shift where people, society as a whole has drifted in its values of gathering to worship. And so all of those are very real, elements when it comes to church attendance and all of that stuff. I do want to say something. This is an interesting statistic. You mentioned church attendance, and my mind automatically, it doesn't really answer your question, but my mind automatically went to a little interesting thing I saw.
Mm-hmm.
A pastor that I follow on social media
Yeah.
that I don't know personally,
Mm-hmm.
that none of my interactions with him are
Yeah.
but he shared some information last week that of all of the main denominations in the United States of America, all of the big denominations, notable ones in the United States of America, in the last 50 years, the Assemblies of God is the only denomination that grew.
Really?
Yes, and it grew by 50%,
Yeah.
whereas every other denomination decreased.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's a lot of questions, asked of that. Um, and I have my own. This isn't a podcast to have that conversation. Other than it just made me glad that this thing that we are part of
Mm-hmm.
has surged in a time when it seems like the church has become post-Christian, or I mean,
Yeah.
sorry, the nation has become post-Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And in that climate, this fellowship that we're a part of has surged. Now, I think large part it's because we have embraced wholeheartedly the powerful work of the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
and we're a very missional organization. Our roots are we're going to evangelize the world. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
win the world. So anyway,
Yeah.
long way around to say,
Yeah.
and I don't know that I adequately in any way. I mean, there are countless books written on why church attendance has waned in America.
Yeah.
Why we've gone from, people averaging attending church, you know, 3.25 times a week
Mhm.
versus now it's 1.5, or excuse me, 3.25 times a month to
Yeah.
now it's like, 1.5 times a month.
Mhm.
I That's a bigger, deeper conversation.
Yeah, and it's interesting because sometimes I think people forget the need of them being part of the body. And you
Yeah.
kind of touched on that on Sunday as well of like there are different parts of this body that, you know, if we don't have everyone, we're missing out.
Yeah.
We're limping along sometimes because
Right.
we're missing the foot or the hand or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting like the thought process is so I guess can sometimes be, oh, like you were saying, I saw this on social media. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
I watched the sermon.
Yeah.
I'm good. But it's like, no, we kind of need everyone involved, not just a viewer.
Right. I mean, I stand up and preach every week. And so
Hmm.
obviously I think there's an importance on that.
Hmm.
But I think the importance of the preaching of the word is exponentially increased when the preaching of the word is heard and lived within the context of a church community, right?
Hmm.
So when I say that, like I can listen to a million sermons and it's good for me, it's beneficial for me. But there I'm living in the vacuum of self in hearing those, right? There's no community to test and try what I'm living,
Hmm.
and so there is, uh, to me. I'm not a social person by nature.
Mhm.
I don't, I'm not life of the party. I'm not, um, a social butterfly by any means. And so I'm not by nature somebody that will highlight the social relational aspect of something. But I watch what happens in the body of Christ, and I know that the relational element in the body of Christ is undeniably crucial for somebody's spiritual development
Mhm.
and is as important, maybe more important than the preaching, than the singing, than all the other things we do. Because when you look at the origins of the church, it was so communal.
Mhm.
It was so relational, and that the checks and balances, the ebb and flow, the I benefit you, you benefit me aspects of the church. Um, you just can't find it anywhere else, right?
Mhm.
Now, obviously, there will be some that would say, "Well, my church is my 5, 6, 7 friends that we're doing life together and we're following Jesus together." And I know that people say that. I don't think that lingo is as prevalent now, but
Mhm.
I mean, for a stretch, that was like, "Well, I'm just doing this is my church, my little group of friends here," and like from a very literal standpoint,
Mhm.
okay, all right, I'm not going to fight you a ton on that.
Mhm.
The problem with that is, um, most of the time there is a major deficiency on discipleship in that context of like really growing in the Lord because you
Yeah.
become your own little echo chamber. You're all friends. You all kind of see the same. You're going to talk about the same things. Like you need a broader context that's going to challenge, that's going to stretch, that's going to strain, that's going to take you outside at times of the comfort of your friend group
Yeah.
and put you into other scenarios that push against parts of your flesh or parts of your soul that need some pushing. Um, so I just can't say enough how important the relationships are within the church. And of course,
Yeah.
we're a bigger church. We're not a mega church. We're a bigger church,
Mhm.
and um, I know people can feel like the whole concept of relationships is not necessarily real attainable in our context. That's kind of a stereotype of a bigger church. And so there are a lot of people that like a bigger church because it kind of allows them to not engage relationally. I
Yeah.
can just come, I can receive the ministry from the platform, and then I can go about my week. And while I am grateful for people attending and kind of that being their experience, I would say there's something that you're missing out on
Yeah.
in, and not just missing out on like, oh, we're having a good time. No, you're missing out on some very rich, beautiful, meaningful, life-giving relationships that are growing you and making you better. But I talked about, being a bigger church and maybe people feel like deep relationships aren't feasible or
Mhm.
of course we have hundreds of people in our church that would tell you, no, it's very feasible.
Yeah.
But there's a young man, he may or may not listen to the podcast, that I've known for years, that hadn't not too long ago moved into the Nashville area. And he was attending a church that was smaller in large part because it was he knew some people there, some familiarity,
Mhm.
and just kind of had in his mind like, man, you know, Cornerstone's a big church. I don't know if I can really plug in there.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with him this past week of like, Cornerstone got really small really quick for him. He
Yeah.
came in, jumped in with our young adults, made some connections, and really quick, Cornerstone went from this, huge facility and this bigger church to a meaningful, life-giving, like small knit community for him.
Yeah.
So it's findable.
Yeah.
You just have to be determined to put yourself out there to find it.
Yeah. And as we kind of wrap up here, it leads into the ending of your sermon. You're talking about, and you even had the visual representation of a sword and shield on stage.
Yeah, and
That
that sword was heavy, man.
Yeah.
They gave me
It's a
I needed a
it's
plastic sword. That thing was brutal.
That's a legit sword.
Yes.
Um, it goes into that.
Side note, like I asked for that sword on like Wednesday when I started to prepping the message and the shield. And like by the time I got up to preach, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm gonna do with this. I'm just gonna hold it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, but I did. And
Yeah.
I mean, our team, they were faithful. They got me what I needed. So
Well, what like lending our sword and shield, like talking about the importance of being part of the family. You can find relationship in the church, and it's kind of like this last point of like we we need to kind of be in community with each other and stand up and support each other in that way too.
oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what we talked about, a symbiotic relationship.
Mhm.
Like it's mutually beneficial. There are times, and I think I said this in the first service, there are times when the church is more beneficial to you than you are the church
Mhm.
because you're in need, you're going through it, like you're kind of having a tough season, and the church is really beneficial to you. And then there are seasons when you're more beneficial to the church than the church is to you, as
Yeah.
in you're thriving and you're doing really well and you are elevating others because of what's happening in your life, you know.
Mhm.
And so you come into the context of the church knowing that there is a give and a receive. Like I am adding to, I'm contributing to the health, the unity, the potency, the strength of this church.
Mhm.
And I am drawing from, gleaning, receiving from the health, the potency, the strength of the church. And I think when you come in with that mindset of twofold, I'm here to receive, and man, I got something to give. I think then you start stepping into a very healthy relationship with the church. Now, there's a whole lot of extra conversation that can be had. Plenty of people listening have had negative experiences with the church.
Mhm.
Plenty of people who won't listen to this podcast because it is from a church
Yeah.
have had negative experiences with the church. And that's real. And I just will say, in any context in the world, anytime you get humans together, people are going to get hurt.
Mhm. Yeah.
I, and I think having a right idea of what the church is matters a lot.
Mhm.
The church is not perfect. The church is a bride that is becoming perfect. We're perfect in the sense that Jesus has cleansed us of our sins, and he stands before the Father as an advocate, and we are free and we are forgiven. But obviously, we're still all in varying degrees of process when it comes to our soul and our flesh, right?
Yeah.
And so you you enter into the context of the church, not not suspicious, but understanding. I'm dealing with people,
Yeah.
and I'm going to have to enter this with a lot of grace and mercy,
Mhm.
um, at the kind of leading the way through this, because people are going to not always get it right.
Yeah.
People are going to get in the flesh. People are going to, and obviously there's two different categories, and we've discussed that on the podcast before.
Mhm.
There is abuse, which has happened,
Yeah.
that is a deep offense to God, whether
Yeah.
it's the abuse of narcissism, the abuse of you know perversion,
Mhm.
the abuse of greed and manipulation. There's abuse that is an offense and a stench in the nostrils of God.
Mhm.
And then there's a whole lot of just, we're dealing with people, and that comes with a lot of discomfort. So I'm going to enter into the context of the church knowing there's gonna be some times of testing,
Yeah.
but I'm here, like in those times, I'm here to help better the situation, you
Mhm.
know. And the truth is, I'm coming in with some of my own stuff,
Yeah.
so I need the church to help better me in those areas.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so knowing you're going into a symbiotic relationship where it's mutually beneficial, I think is really important. And I think it's important for every congregant to see that.
Yeah.
That especially again in a little bit larger church context, it's really easy to just kind of like, all right, the platform's got it.
Yeah.
The platform kind of being the visual symbol for the pastoral staff and all the employees. They got it.
Yeah.
I'm not as needed. And I would say the complete opposite. You are very needed,
Yeah.
deeply needed. And you got to see yourself that way,
Yeah.
as you enter the body. And because we're family.
Mhm.
And every part of the family makes the family better.
Yeah.
And I want to say, like, you look at people and you're like, I don't know if they're making the family better, right? They're kind of quote dragging us down,
Yeah.
right? No, that is the time when the family says we're going to help make them better. We're going
Yeah.
to help them.
Yeah. And, this is the first half of the statement. We are a blessed family.
Yes.
So I assume this Sunday we're talking about the blessed side of the blessed family. Yeah.
Yeah. I did it in a little reverse order because I felt like we need to, first Sunday of the year, we need to hone in on the relational aspect of what we are. We'll
Yeah.
talk about being blessed this
Mhm.
week, and it'll have a few layers.
Mhm.
It'll be retrospective. What's happened in our life. We'll talk about finances. We'll talk about what it is to be a blessed people.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. And then we'll start moving through the next few values.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being part of our family, the church family.
Yes.
And we're praying for you. If you're part of the fast, remember that there's devotionals coming out over the 21 days of fasting. So make sure to watch for those. And we just thank you for being part of our church family, for participating in the fasting if you are, and for being here this coming Wednesday when we have service, or whenever you watch this, or this coming Sunday. And we just can't wait to do life with you, to get you on team, to get you deeper into this relationship of family that we
Yes.
have. And we just hope that you have a great week and that you stay strong if you are fasting, because I'm hungry. So see ya.
All right.